I'm Sherry Conrad, and I'm so happy to introduce Mark Keith, our parent liaison with the Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing. As reviewed in our first TA Live webinar throughout the year, we are going to be discussing each of the 10 essential principles of the Optimizing Outcomes Guidelines from the National Association of State Directors of Special Education, or NASD, followed by a panel of experts whom will share their experiences based on each of those principles. If you have questions throughout the presentation portion, please put them in the Q&A box so that the panelists can address them during our panel discussion. We're also going to be using a live binder throughout the year to keep all the resources we discuss in one place. The resources discussed during the webinars, as well as the slide deck, can be found in the live binder. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. Please hold for technical difficulties. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Mark Keith and his panel of experts.
Hi, everybody. As Sherry pointed out, I am Mark Keith, and I'm the parent liaison for the project. Today, we're on our third webinar. The first two, of course, dealt with the first two principles, which was each student is unique, and the second one being high expectations drive educational programming and future employment opportunities. We've now arrived at the third one. The third one is families are critical partners. So that's what our topic is for today. So families are critical partners. Why? Right off the bat, families are critical partners because first off, it's established in law. IDEA requires it. Also in Florida, the Florida statute, as well as Florida board rules require it. So as a family, as a parent, myself, it's what I would expect. That goes beyond just as a parent and a family member whose child it is you guys are responsible for educating. Of course, I want my involvement. What's important to remember is that in this whole process, all participants' perceptions are important in creating an effective team. The team doesn't work in IDEA unless everybody, including the parents, are involved, and each member of that team is critical. When we talk about data gathering, this is a huge part for the team. First off, education does not exist in a bubble. Everything that happens to that child outside school, inside school, wherever they're at, is going to impact what happens in the educational world. As a teacher, you're going to see that impact every day. Good things, bad things, everything that child is involved in is going to somehow, some way, going to be reflected in what happens in the classroom with that child. And remember, children are only in school about 180 days a year, maybe 8 or 9 hours a day. They're always with their families. 365 days a year, they're with their families, and anytime they're not in school. So there's a huge external influence coming in, and that's an influence the parents are going to have the most knowledge about. They're the ones who are dealing with the child when they're outside of school. And all this information of what goes on in that child's life has importance in determining the educational needs of that child and how to educate the child. It's also really important that for the team, information and data is available to all members of that team. It can't just be discussions off to the side or in school and the parents not being involved for multiple reasons. One of the big ones is having the parents involved, having that information and data available to them too, what's going on at school. It creates a better and well-informed decision making. Further, that information coming from the parents to you as the other team members and the educational professionals helps you understand what's going on, what other influences are happening with that child, what other things are going on in that child's life. Further, there are times when the child will be doing things at home and in different environments that they're not doing in school that may also be things that you can take and use in the classroom to help that child educationally. All this together will create better and well-informed decision making. And that's the key to the IEP teams, to IDEA, to making this process work, to be effective for the child to create an effective educational process. Finally, it also creates consistency between home and school. If a parent knows what's going on at school and how what services, supports are taking place, they can also support those at home and vice versa. If there's problems at home, problems or at school, it's easier to deal with them as the group so that there's consistency, especially with younger kids. If things aren't consistent between home and school, there can be confusion. And that confusion slows down the educational process. We don't want that to happen. So it's critical that the families it's critical the families are critical partners. Another way, I mentioned this already, but the reinforcement of rules, cross-location support. I can tell you an example in my own life. When my son Ian was little, when he was in middle school, he got into trouble at school. It wasn't a big deal, but it was something we wanted to reinforce that it was a problem, that the behavior really wasn't acceptable, and it needed to stop. The teacher had already informed me before he had gotten home. We had discussed what we were going to do. I implemented the punishment at home. It mirrored the punishment at school. And I know it was successful because, one, the behavior stopped, and two, the next day the teacher had overseen Ian signing with some of his friends. And when they heard about the punishment, they're going, "Oh my God, your dad's so strict." It's like, no, I wasn't being strict. I was matching that my discipline with the school's discipline, so it would be consistent for him, and he would understand it wasn't acceptable. Again, those improved lines of communication when the families are critical partners, it improves the ability to respond quickly when changes occur. Now, this can be a lot of different things, not just discipline, but say, for instance, Ian, for those of you who know me, Ian is deaf and he also has CP. He fell one time, broke his arm. Well, for a kid who's CP, but ambulatory, you're suddenly taking away support and balance. You're adding a cast to the arm. That was information that had to be communicated. And plus, he's a sign language user. So you're taking away one of his hands to be able to sign with. The ability to communicate that to school quickly, where they could understand what was happening, what was going on, and they could begin to implement responses there to help him get through his school day without any impacts to his education. Those lines of communication have to stay open, and when families are critical partners, they do. Also, being a critical partner also creates more openness with the family and with the school. That exchange of ideas, people are comfortable with each other. They can exchange data and ideas back and forth without concerns or worries about how it's going to be perceived. The bottom line is when families are treated as critical partners, you're going to have better educational results. Now, when people are not treated as educational partners, this is what happens. You don't want to be the IEP coordinator in this situation. When a parent doesn't get information, when a parent walks into an IEP meeting without having been involved in the discussions or the decision making, I know I've seen my wife turn into Mama Grizzly Bear when she wants to eat the IEP coordinator. It's not a fun place to be. Bottom line, not including families opens up doors to a lot of bad things. It can reduce communication, it reduces trust, it reduces levels of support, and it creates the door for misunderstandings, which is never a good thing in the educational process. So how do you foster families as critical partners? First off, and this may sound strange, but give them permission to be part of the group. As educational professionals, school's a very comfortable place for teachers, administrators, whoever. But for parents, many times school is looked at the same as a hospital or a doctor's office or a courtroom. It's a strange place, it's a confusing place, and it's a place they're not comfortable being. As a teacher, as an administrator, give them permission. Let them know it's okay, that you want them in the group. You want their input. It's important to you. That'll help them relax and open up the door to them to step inside the team and to be a member of that team. Show respect. I mean, the golden rule kind of treat everybody as you want to be treated yourself. It goes a long way. And the reality is many families aren't going to have the technical educational language background. Okay, so they're not going to necessarily have all the right words, but they are going to know about their child, and they're going to be able to contribute, and they're going to be able to understand the issues, topics as they come up if you explain them to them and let them know what really you're talking about. Another thing you can do is train the families how to participate in IEP meetings and explain their rights to them under IDEA. This is important. None of us come into that process as experts in education, unless, of course, we're a teacher to begin with. Most of us, it's a new world. Sitting on that around that table with 5, 10 other professional people who are professionals, it's a new world for us. We don't know what the laws are a lot of times when we start this process, and it helps, and by teaching us, it helps us get comfortable with that process and brings us up to speed faster and makes us a more effective team member. Make sure that parents are part of discussions and are consulted. Actively pull them in. The IEP process isn't just an IEP meeting where the parent shows up for that one day a year. Let them know what's going on during the year. Get their input. This helps include them, it helps make them critical partners in their minds. It also keeps, again, those lines of communication where everybody knows what's going on. Think about it. If you're going to consider somebody a partner in a team, if you're not including them in discussions and decision making during the year, you're not really making them part of the team. You're not considering them critical partners. Encourage parents to ask questions. Honestly, I would rather have a parent ask me 50 questions, take up time, than not show up, than be the one who doesn't say anything and doesn't show up to the meeting. Because when that's happening, the team is losing valuable information that you can use to help that child and help their education. That's a weakness. That's a bad thing in my mind. Help them take that time. That parent who's asking questions, they want the knowledge. They want to be able to help their child. They want to be a part of that group. They're soliciting the information from you because they trust you. Bottom line, they wouldn't ask somebody they don't trust for answers. So take time and listen to them. Yes, sometimes you're going, I've really got somewhere else I got to be, or got something else I got to do. But that at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes can save you hours later on in the process when they're actually included in the process. Never present a parent with a fait accompli. Never walk into an IEP meeting and hand the parent a document they've never seen before and say, hey, this is a draft IEP, or hey, here's their communication plan. If it was done to me as a parent, my first response would be, okay, let's reschedule this meeting for 2 weeks from now. So I have time to take this home, sit down, read it, and be sure I understand it and have time to ask questions that I can then process to think about how, if I need to ask for changes. Also, handing parents a document like that at a meeting, it doesn't engender trust. Because then it's like, okay, well, how come I've been cut out of this whole discussion, this whole process? I will tell you, when Ian was in school, the IEP team would walk in and hand me a document that was ready to sign. What had gone from 3 to 3.5 hour IEP meetings because of his disabilities, all the time it took to get through them, turned into 45-minute meetings. Why? Because we had been talking about the IEP, what needed to be included. We'd been discussing them back and forth, asking questions, coming to agreement for a month, 2 months in advance of that meeting. I felt very comfortable with my IEP team. I felt like I was counted as a critical partner and was involved in those discussions so that when the IEP meeting arrived, there were no surprises. Think about, I always looked at the IEP meeting as buying a house. It's your closing. You're going there to sign the paperwork because everything else has been negotiated and dealt with in advance. Okay? Think about that as a process. And think about if somebody surprised you, walked into a house closing and somebody said, oh, by the way, we've changed the price. You're now going to pay $25,000 extra for this house. It's going to cause a problem, right? Same kind of idea. Now, I love this, fans, but failure, the best teacher it is. This is actually out of the second to last movie. If anybody saw that, and I actually have the video clip, but I can't, because it's being recorded, I can't use it. if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a point when Luke Skywalker is totally distraught. He's burning the tree, burning all the Jedi books and the history, and he's considered himself an utter failure. And Yoda looks at him and starts laughing and goes, "Failure, the best teacher it is." Truthfully, give parents permission to fail. Give them the ability to fail. Those things are going to be critical. A lot of times parents don't grasp that this is not a zero-sum game. It's okay to try something and have it not work, because you can then try something else. And when you've tried something and it's not been successful, you've then garnered information that you can use to help improve that educational process. While something may fail, you may also pick up other information that can be useful further on down the line with other techniques and processes that will be successful. But let them know it's okay. It's okay. The world doesn't end if something doesn't work successfully the first time you try at something. So, how to foster families as critical partners? Keep the lines of communication open, always. That is number one. As long as you do that, it will have a major impact on letting parents know they're critical partners and they will be involved. Realize that families know their children, even if they don't know that technical language. They can be helpful. They can provide lots of information to you, and they can provide information about other situations that you can then take and garner information, glean information out of to put in place to use with the educational plan. Be open to alternative solutions. All of us have been in situations where we've had two kids, same age, same disabilities, same disability labels, everything's the same, but yet one of them had this happen to me last year, as a matter of fact. Two little boys. One of them, you looked at him, you tried to sign with him, he did this, but you started speaking and he's trying to imitate you. The little boy who was right next to him, you started to talk, but you started the hands moving, his hands were going, he was trying to copy. Exact same diagnosis. These boys could have been brothers. They were so similar to each other, but yet one was clearly already moving into the route of oral communication. The other one was very clearly moving in the route of sign. Okay, be open to alternatives. Just because something's worked with one child in the past doesn't mean it's going to work that same way with a different child. Be open to those alternatives. And lastly, have a thick skin. And what I mean by this, understand that being a parent of a child with disabilities, it's very stressful. Often there's no place for those parents to release that frustration, and it has a tendency to build up, and it can boil over and pop out. And sometimes you're going to be the person standing there, you're going to be in a meeting when that's going to happen, and you're going to feel like they're dumping on you. In reality, they're not. They're just venting. And parents will often say things that come across as harsh or rude or mean. And in reality, they don't really often mean it. They're just frustrated and need somebody to vent to. And you happen to be that person who's standing there and catches it. Try and think about that when that happens, and give them a second chance. Give them that opportunity. That also will go a long way, again, to letting them know that you trust them and consider them a critical partner in this process. Because most of the time when that happens, the parent will go home and they'll sit there and go, darn, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have responded that way. And then they're embarrassed about it. Now, sometimes they're very happy to say what they said, but most of the time, nobody likes to be mean to somebody. Nobody wants somebody being mean to them. A lot of times parents do go home and they regret what they've said, and they don't know how to kind of walk it back. Be gracious with that. Understand. So operate with truth and grace, honesty and empathy. Be honest with a parent, but also be empathetic to that family. Understand those stresses. Understand the parent's wants to know the truth. And to be honest with you, most parents, if you're trying to snow them or trying not to give them bad information they want to hear, they're going to know it. They're going to know something's not right. One of the teachers in particular that in our family, in our world, that will always be very dear to us was a middle school teacher when our son was in fourth grade, and she was very honest and open about some things that were going on with Ian, and they hurt at the time because we needed to hear them, and in the long run, it helped us. It helped us immensely, and to this day, we still maintain contact with her, even though we're now 5 states away, because the trust that was engendered from that openness and honesty and the empathy she showed us. Eliminate personal biases and preconceptions. We all have them. Remember to pull them back. Remember to step back from that and look at each child as an individual and as unique. The parents will appreciate that immensely. I always tell people, if you really want to do the best for that child, look at that child and go, okay, if this was my child, what would I want done? How would I want my child's education to be dealt with and handled? What would I want? And remember, too, the least dangerous assumption. Assume, until you know differently, assume the child can do the work and the child is capable. It's far easier to step things back if you have to than it is to try and catch up because you started back here and went, and then 2 months, 3 months into the process go, oops, he really is capable of doing this. So remember the least dangerous assumption. And I'm going to finish with this. Abraham Lincoln's one of my 2 favorite presidents. Teddy Roosevelt's my other one. But Lincoln was quoted, and I think it applies to education, to the educational process particularly well, when he said, I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. I mean, if you can live with that and live that way, that's fantastic. If you can keep that in mind, that's a fantastic thing to do and kind of a light to guide by. So anyway.
Thank you for watching this TA Live webinar. RMTC DHH is a Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services discretionary project, and all of the services we provide are at no cost to Florida stakeholders. To continue our work, we must collect survey data to justify why our services are needed. If you could please complete our survey, we would greatly appreciate it. You can keep in touch with RMTC DHH by following us on social media, and we have a Vimeo and YouTube channel with a plethora of videos of our presentations, our TA Live webinars, and some additional videos demonstrating working with students who are DHH. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at info@rmtcdhh.org.